Anybody there? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Let's see. Karina, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Okay, let me see when my volume's, I think, low. Okay, can you speak again?
What about now?
Okay, yeah, now my volume's up.
Okay, cool.
Okay, if anybody enters and say anything, I'm gonna go get some sample leaves of citrus real quick.
Okay.
That's it.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so Cynthia's here. Oh, Keith's here. I think his microphone's not working. There's no microphone option. Keith. Oops. Oops. Okay, Keith,
Hey Frank, how you doing?
good. I got your thing. See if I can give you. How do I give you control so you can see stuff or can for your presentation?
I think if you hover over my window, the three dots, you click on
Okay.
that, you should be able to make a co-presenter or something like that.
Me. And the resolution doesn't look too great. Let me see. How's my quality coming through? Other than dark.
Looks okay. And I can now share my screen, so that works for me. You see that okay?
Yeah, let me see if there's a settings. You know where you check the resolution? And making sure we're at a higher resolution. All right. Just looking at the,
Your camera looks pretty good to me.
yeah, I'm just trying to see where
It looks
they
pretty
have this
clear.
settings to make sure they don't throw it to low resolution. It's recording. And we're able to see the questions I sent you today?
I did. I did not include those in these slides, but I can pull them up and hopefully we'll be able to address them.
Okay, cool. And also I have some leaves and some sample of fruit to look at visually after you do your presentation to see, you know, like what would this be considered as, let me see like the,
So full disclosure, actually identifying stuff is extremely difficult. Happy to take pictures and share them with our primary pathologists and get their opinion, expert opinion weigh in. All we can do is, you know, if we see symptoms of pests and diseases, we will call them suspects and collect them. But otherwise, yeah, we're not able to make identifications on the spot or in the field, or even want to take a guess at them.
and have they increased the amount of samples they're able to process a year?
Yes, over the last several years, we have new technology at the lab, and we have a different lab that we're also utilizing to increase the number of samples we're able to process and use a high throughput method to really do as much as possible.
Yeah, because the last number I heard was 138,000 a year.
I believe it's gone up since then, but
Okay.
you know, either way, it's quite a bit, and it's usually limited by our ability to actually collect the samples.
Okay. Nice.
Do you expect more people? Would you like to get
Yeah.
started, or what are you thinking?
We expect more people. Let me, oh. Give me a sec. I just, two people just registered again. So let me message them real fast.
Frank,
Yeah.
it's Marisa. I've got, just so you know, I've got two people listening in on this device.
Oh, okay. Okay. I just sent them that. Okay. So let me give it a minute here. Let me try to fix my lighting. How's my face? It's hard to do with the light behind me.
I try not to ask people how my face is, but your camera looks good.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so. Yeah, I was surprised how much I learned in the last week about HLB before it's quite eye-opening. And has this staff throughout the system been changing since the pandemic started?
It's been difficult to onboard people in positions, especially in areas that where there's a higher cost of living. You know, as a state agency, we're somewhat limited in what we can offer. So it has been challenging in onboarding people in certain areas as well as maintaining them. But I do think right now we're about as close as we can be to fully staffed. So, we're doing everything we can to protect the industry.
Yeah, we don't want it to turn out like Florida.
Absolutely. They have all they get is juice fruit, and that's worth, maybe 10% of the fresh market. That might be really generous.
Yeah, because when they're not getting the juices, the fruit is not ripe. The juice isn't as sweet as it normally is. And then you got to mix it from juice from other areas. And it doesn't, probably not even going to taste the same.
A
Well,
lot of sugar and a lot of replacing trees.
yeah. And a lot of mini canopies. Okay. Okay. And the guy from Fruit Mentor signed up to see this. You know him, Dan Wiley?
Yeah, I think we've spoken. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, he has a YouTube channel called Fruit Mentor. And he does a lot of grafting, and he's done tours of some of the facilities where they do the DNA testing for the HLB and made videos on it. So, yeah, okay, so let me see. Okay, so let's just start it now, and then as people come in, they can start listening. I'm gonna do the housekeeping of our meeting. And one of the purposes of this presentation is gonna be to put it on YouTube to put out more of a message to people, because right now a lot of people are confused, giving misinformation, and there's actually some stuff falling through the cracks, I think, like when they're doing the fruit gleaning. People aren't taking into account the leaves and all that other stuff and washing it, because it's just going straight to a food pantry, which I don't think it's good for your goals, Keith. What do you think?
Yeah, we do work with a lot of gleaners, organizations that harvest fruit, and we do work with them as much as possible to allow them to continue what they're doing, because we never want to impede business. At the same time, we want to work with them so they are able to move fruit in a way that doesn't put the industry at a bigger risk.
Yeah. Okay. And then I'll talk about our club. The club is a 501c3 nonprofit with education and goals relating to the fruit industry for home growers. And we give classes on grafting, air layering, various propagation methods. We also offer set up tours for the members to go on different places, from the landfills to water treatment plants to people's gardens. And we're hoping to keep the project going long-term and be an example for other chapters to follow with. And we want all meetings to be recorded and then shared to the public, as that follows in line with the goal of everybody involved. So, and let's let Keith introduce himself and then start his presentation.
Sure. So I'm Keith Okasaki. I am the citrus quarantine supervisor for the Citrus Pest and Disease Prevention Division with the California Department of Food and Agriculture. I'm based up in Sacramento, but we work very closely with all the county ag commissioners throughout the state, as well as growers, packers, and really everybody who is dealing with citrus, because our goal is to protect our California citrus industry from invasive pests and diseases. All right, so just a little overview. I'm just going to give you a little overview of our division, give you an update on the Wanlongbing or HLB detections that we've had to date. I'm going to touch on the Clean Citrus Nursery Stock Program because I think that is very relevant to this group, and just to kind of give you an idea of the rules and regulations that apply when it comes to citrus nursery stock. And then Frank provided me some questions that you guys had submitted previously, so I'm going to try to address all of those and then leave you with some links and resources. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you guys because, as you'll see in later slides, you know, HLB is the most devastating citrus disease in the world. California is one of the last few fresh market citrus industries without HLB to date. And you guys being in Orange County, you know, Orange County has had a significant number of HLB detections, and you guys also have quite a bit of citrus acreage just at South County. So your guys' effort in your area will help protect the citrus industry in Orange County as well as Southern California in general. So just some general citrus by the numbers. You know, there's $3.4 billion in sale, $7 billion in economic revenue, a lot of jobs, a lot of farmers, and a lot of citrus production acres. And because of this, our division, the Citrus Pest and Disease Prevention Division, was founded or the program was established probably close to 10 years ago. Our division itself was established in July of 2019 to dedicate resources to protecting the citrus industry. And we have offices stationed throughout the state, strategically located, close to areas of high risk of introduction or infection of HLB, as well as in and around areas with a lot of commercial citrus production. So as of about 5 days ago, this was our total number of HLB detections. And so what you'll see here, and I think there was some questions about this, the total number of sites, total number of HLB positive trees, as well as CLAS positive ACP. So the number of sites tells you how many properties are involved, and then the total number of HLB positive trees. So just take Orange County, for example. We have found 2,786 positive trees on 1,830 different properties. So that means that there are several properties with more than one HLB positive tree. And that's not uncommon throughout these areas. As you'll see, San Bernardino averages close to 2 positive trees per site. And then CLAS positive ACP, again, so those sites also include that number as well. So that CLAS positive ACP does not trigger a regulatory response on our part. We will not establish a quarantine based on a Candidatus Liberibacter asiatica is the bacteria that causes Wanlongbing, HLB. So ACP carry the bacteria in their gut, feed on trees, and eventually we will find the tree to be positive for HLB. We do establish a quarantine area with a 5-mile radius from each HLB positive tree, and every positive tree does get treated, removed, and we do a delimitation survey of 250 meters around that positive tree. So as of 5 days ago, we have found over 3,700 positive trees, and 472 CLAS positive ACP. Fortunately, to date, we have not found HLB in a commercial citrus grove. That's really, that's really shows the good work that growers are doing, as well as our staff in the Southern District and throughout the state, that we're working really hard to keep HLB out of commercial citrus. This is a map. Let me go back here again. And to date, we've also only found HLB in these 5 counties: LA, Orange, Riverside, San Bernardino, San Diego. We have not found the disease or the bacteria outside of these 5 counties. This is a map of the treatment areas, the HLB quarantine area. So you'll see the green areas. Those are around positive tree detections, where it's a mandatory response, where there's the 250-meter treatment area. The purple is a non-mandatory, which basically means that's where we found a CLAS positive ACP. And like I mentioned previously, there is no quarantine response for that kind of detection. So you'll see here, we have not established quarantine areas around these purple areas. They're a non-mandatory response, but that basically signifies that that's where we found a CLAS positive ACP. So around these green areas, we've established quarantine areas, which is this blue line, around those with a 5-mile radius from those detections. So I want to give you guys a little insight into the Citrus Clonal Protection Program, which is the CCPP at UC Riverside. It's currently directed by Dr. Georgios Vidalakis. And basically all citrus material registered in California goes through this program. And I'll get into details a little later, but basically they do a lot of work, a lot of testing to help ensure that only clean citrus, certified clean citrus, is distributed throughout the state. Any new varieties, any new materials that want to come in are required to go through Georgios' program at the CCPP. So just a brief overview of their process. As they receive new material, they do a disease diagnosis. They test for graft transmissible diseases. If needed, they will do pathogen elimination therapy. And then once that's passed through their processes, they will apply for quarantine release to introduce a new variety or new bud line into California. And that time takes approximately 3 years. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of effort, but that really helps us ensure that only clean citrus is being distributed throughout the state. Because again, our whole purpose is to protect that citrus industry. And then there's a maintenance component that we work with production nurseries throughout the state to help them maintain their certified clean nursery stock. And again, this is it only applies to citrus. So just a brief overview of the timeline. Again, I mentioned it takes about 3 years. This is kind of the timeline that it takes for them to introduce new material to the state. So that citrus nursery stock pest cleanliness program is now being administered by our citrus division, previously done by another division at CDFA. But basically, it's a program that's established in the California Code of Regulations and is mandatory for all citrus producers. So anyone who wants to produce citrus material to basically to take cuttings from or to propagate new citrus, they're regulated, and we work with them to help them maintain their clean citrus. There's a lot of steps and requirements that they go through. There's currently 26 participating nurseries. We had one that applied recently, so that I expect that to go up to 27 in the very near future. And part of their requirement is they have to maintain an approved insect resistant structure. Their registered mother increasing seed trees are sampled and tested on a regular basis. We have an established schedule to test for all viruses and viroids. And 10 should not be in there. But basically those nurseries, because they're registered with this program, are able to distribute that propagative material to, to consumers, homeowners, if they want to receive material to graft onto the trees, because we know that certified clean material, the large part of this program is to help keep people from cutting their own material and sharing it around, because that does pose a big risk to the citrus industry. Okay, let's see. Got a few questions here. All right, got a few questions here in the chat. How often are the map boundaries updated? I will go back to this. So this specific map with the treatment areas is updated pretty much on a weekly basis. For the quarantine boundary, that's always dependent on if we're finding HLB positive trees. There's been time, from the initial introduction in 2012 in Hacienda Heights, we didn't find another HLB positive tree until the San Gabriel area in, I think, June or May of 2015. So we went close to 3 years without updating that boundary, but there's times where it could be updated on a weekly basis. So it's only updated based on detections, and I've provided a link in here that you'll see later that you can sign up for those updates, that you'll be notified as soon as they are updated. Another question regarding red finger lime scions. What's the ETA? Rumor was with the next 2 years. It's being distributed commercial. I unfortunately don't have the answer to that. That's something maybe we can work through the master gardeners, because that's a lot of times that's going to be up to the Citrus Clonal Protection Program. Okay, so this is getting into some of the questions that were submitted. What can be, and feel free to chime in if you'd like, if we get to your question and you'd like more clarification. What can be done to get rid of the psyllid? Do psyllids go dormant? So Southern California is considered the generally infested area. Their psyllid populations are very high. We focus on HLB detections and treating for psyllids around those HLB detections, because they pose a higher risk of carrying CLAS and transmitting that to other trees. In the Central Valley, Northern California, where populations are very low, every time we have a psyllid detection, we respond with a treatment program and try to do what we can to eradicate psyllids from those areas. And so far, we've been extremely successful. It is a lot of effort, but it's more feasible to do that in Northern and Central California. Southern California, we focus on knocking down the population and preventing the spread of CLAS. Do psyllids go dormant? That's a good question. There is a specific degree range where they thrive, especially when there's multiple, when citrus plants are flushing. I think anywhere from, and I forget the exact numbers, but anywhere from 70 to 85 degrees, they do really well. Once it gets over once it gets really hot, they don't do quite as well. But that being said, we have found we have found a number of psyllids in the Central Valley, even when it was in the the temperatures were in the hundreds when they're not expected to do as well. Do ACP only eat citrus plants? If all citrus is removed, can I bring new ones in after a year? So there is a host list. It's not limited to citrus. There's other hosts like curry, mariah, mock orange plants, betel leaves. So it's not limited only to citrus. Generally, it's rutaceae. If all citrus is removed, that's a really difficult question. You're always welcome to bring in new plants. There's nothing that prohibits you from doing that. Plants are able to be brought into the HLB quarantine area, especially if they're just going to be planted in the ground. That presents a lower risk of movement for us. So we don't discourage that. We do discourage and really don't allow movement of those plants from, once they're in the quarantine area. Because at that point, that presents a higher risk of spreading the disease if those trees are infected, which it's really difficult to tell if they are or not. Can ACP or their eggs be transported in the surface soil or of a nearby plant? Meaning, if a potted plant like fig was sitting under an affected tree, could ACP or their eggs fall into it? Then when I move the plant to a friend across town, could they be transported? There's always that possibility. It's not like fruit flies where they're an internal feeder, bore out, and then fall into the soil. I do have a picture here that you guys may have seen. So this is what it could look like with life stages. On a leaf, typically they'll be stuck to leaves. I'm not saying that it can't happen in the soil, but typically they'll be on new flesh and on a lot of times on the underside of leaves. Oh no, sorry. Every time it'll happen. Okay. Do ACP carrying CLAS pass it on to their offspring? Yes. So there's always risk of a CLAS positive psyllid feeding on a tree, reproducing, laying eggs, and those nymphs can carry the bacteria and then fly away. Infect the nymphs can further infect the tree, fly away, and then infect other trees. How is ACP HLB spread between trees in the residential area? Do psyllids typically leave the tree and go how far, or to another, and how far? A lot of times, especially in the LA Orange County, there is a lot of, I think I saw a number where maybe 60% of households could have citrus. So what we've seen with the HLB detections is when we find an HLB positive tree, we do delimitation surveys within 250 meters of that detection, and we do find quite a few other HLB positive trees. Our quarantine areas for ACP, we've adopted a regional quarantine structure. It used to be a 5-mile radius. We've gone to county-wide if we have ACP. For HLB, it's still a 5-mile radius. So there was a analysis done, I'm sure years ago, that determined that ACP, especially in a wind event or a high wind area, could be blown pretty far and potentially spread CLAS. How effective are tamarixia? Do they attack other insects? Can I get any? We do Tamarixia releases in and around HLB areas, around the U.S.-Mexico border, because there is HLB in Mexico. We also do Tamarixia releases on the coast, up in Santa Clara. So they have shown to be really effective. They're not a replacement for monitoring and any kind of best management practices that may include treatments if that's recommended by maybe your master gardener. Tamarixia are not a standalone, but they are a really effective supplement to other control efforts.
Don't forget to mention what they are.
Thank you. Tamarixia radiata is a parasitoid. They basically feed on ACP nymphs. They seek out ACP nymphs. They basically parasitize, lay eggs and feed on the nymphs and help us reduce numbers significantly. So they are really effective, but it's as a standalone. It's not meant to be a standalone biocontrol release, but they are meant to supplement other efforts. Okay. Yeah, there's another question. It's so important for hobbyists to use disease-free budwood from CCPP. Why did the Citrus Research Board raise the price per bud from 75 cents per bud to $5 per bud? With a huge amount of money being spent to fight HLB, wouldn't it make more sense to subsidize this rather than discourage hobbyists from using CCPP budwood by charging so much? That is a fantastic question. I appreciate that, Dan. I will be happy to take that back to CRB, Citrus Research Board, and help to get some answers. Not something I am well versed in. Does I'm going to butcher that, chitinase in worm casings kill the stylids? That I'm not familiar with that, I'm sorry. The regulations for, and it sounds like the cost has increased significantly, which I can't speak to because I'm not familiar with that. But I know the CCPP does make their budwood and material, and so do other nurseries, available to anyone who wants to buy it. I'm sorry, I can't speak to price increase. I'm more just familiar with the regulations and why they are the reasoning for that. Okay, moving on to HLB questions. What progress are we making on ways to combat HLB? I know there is research being done to find resistant plants. However, it seems like that's a ways to go. We are doing our best in California to remove infected trees, reduce populations, knock down populations of infected psyllids. And so far, I would like to say we're successful because we have been keeping it out of commercial citrus. We are seeing a significant number of detections, but we do have a pretty robust, actually extremely robust pest prevention system in place between detection, treatment, survey, regulation through quarantine, outreach. There are a lot of pillars that are involved that have so far kept HLB out of commercial citrus. Okay, please answer the question about getting Tamarixia. I think there are ways to get Tamarixia, that there are private suppliers that can provide. That's not something we can recommend because that could be, we're not able to recommend that as a state agency as who to go to. but I believe there are ways to get Tamarixia for biocontrol release. Just like I think growers are able to get that on their own as well. We, as a department, as an agency, do Tamarixia releases. I said, probably if you're in Orange County, probably in your area, we probably do Tamarixia releases if HLB has been found in the area. It is part of our pest prevention system that we implement. So why is the government not administering vaccines for HLB? Right now, there is no cure for HLB. That is, there are researchers who are looking at this, looking at getting resistance, establishing resistance. But right now, there is no cure for HLB. Once a tree is infected, it will ultimately produce poor quality fruit and then die. My tree was sprayed for HLB, so I am protected from getting it now. If everyone's trees got sprayed, there would not be any problems. So kind of related to the bullet above, we are not treating for HLB because there is no cure. We do spray for ACP, and especially in Orange County, we will spray for ACP around within the vicinity of an HLB positive tree. That is done as a knockdown to knock down populations of psyllids that may be carrying the bacteria. We do not have authority to spray trees outside of that eradication and delimitation area that's been established in the California Code of Regulations. So we would not, like I mentioned previously, Southern California is considered generally infested. We don't have the authority to spray beyond what we're able to. I think we would agree with you that this applies to our commercial growers as well. We definitely encourage growers who employ a pest management system that may include treatments, but a lot of times that's not required. There are several people who think that HLB was solved with the cure from the Australian finger lime. Again, as far as I'm aware, and what science will say at the moment is there hasn't been an established cure or resolution for HLB. And I live in a quarantine zone. Can I move a tree to another place within the same quarantine zone? Ideally, no. We really don't want trees moved around because you may, for example, this may or may not be the case in this specific example, but the reason we would say no is because you may be around an epicenter. Your neighbor may have had HLB, and odds are, or there's a very high probability that your tree has been infected because ACP is very prevalent in Southern California. So if the person you wanted to move that tree to was 5 miles away, because we do have a 5-mile radius quarantine boundary, HLB was likely not found within almost 5 miles of that person's house if it's closer to the edge. And we're not, we just have our established regulations. We're not able to differentiate between certain situations in this case because that becomes an arbitrary ruling, and we have to treat everybody as equally and the same. Have any trees been identified as resistant? Possible. Actually, well, if we have a host, there is a established federal host list for HLB. So if it's on the host list, it is susceptible to getting the disease. There have been some developments where seed of certain trees is not regulated for HLB because it's been shown that it may not be seed transmissible. So that's about the only thing where the feds have eased the restriction on material. But basically, if it's on the host list for HLB, which can be found on our website, then I would say it's susceptible to getting disease. Okay, some more HLB questions. I had my plants checked and they told me I did not have HLB. Can I move it to another person's place? So we do a risk-based survey throughout the state. We try to do ideally 2 cycles per year. And that risk-based survey is, it's targeted based on risk, based on several factors that's provided to us by USDA that kind of pinpoint us into where to look. Like I mentioned earlier, we also do imitation surveys and treatment around HLB fines. But by the nature of HLB, depending on the point of infection, when it was infected, if you had, say, for example, one leaf, a psyllid that's an infected psyllid that fed on the tree on one branch, and that may have been, we may have sampled that 2 weeks later, and if we didn't pull leaves from that specific branch because it is slow moving, it may have come back as a negative result, but that doesn't mean that the tree isn't positive. So for that reason, we try to do 2 cycles per year throughout the state. There's a lot of surveying that's being done in Southern California. And there's a lot of areas that are revisited. So just because it came back negative one time, if it's outdoors in the environment and not in a protected structure, it would be considered compromised and it could be infected. We may not have pulled this specific leaf. Getting kind of similar to the second bullet point, for the same reason, we may not have pulled the specific leaves. There are a lot of testing that goes into the Clean Citrus Nursery Stock program. It's significantly more involved than what we do for the risk-based survey for residential properties. So cuttings from trees, that's regulated by the Clean Nursery Stock program. So cuttings from citrus should or cannot be shared. Detection question, HLB leaf color versus other causes of leaf color. So there are symptoms for HLB. There are any number of reasons why a leaf may be discolored, could be nutrient deficiency, could be whatever it may be, but there are some symptoms like the asymmetric mottling. If you do have a question about it, I would highly encourage you to call our pest hotline or to call our department, and we can come out and survey and sample and test for HLB. And why have we heard so little about HLB recently when it was the hottest topic just a few years ago? We do have we have a media or an outreach contractor that they do a lot of targeted advertising, targeted marketing. I would hope that they would be reaching you, especially being in Orange County. That's not that's hard for me to speak to because we do work with them quite a bit to do a significant amount of outreach, whether that be Facebook ads, radio. They're working with different influencers to try to get our message across because this is really important for the citrus industry. I'm looking at questions here coming from the biodiversity and genetic standpoint. Wouldn't it be wiser for us to focus on starting citrus from seed versus grafting and Really, I would just say to that, as long as you're getting that seed or material from an approved source, then that's all good and well. Okay, so some quarantine related questions. What should a backyard farmer with 5 citrus trees do? It really depends on what you do with your fruit. There's a lot of residences with 5 trees that only do it for personal consumption, and that's completely fine. If you're marketing your fruit or selling your fruit, that's something we would like to talk to you about, ways to do that in a way that mitigates the pest risk. That should have low impact on you, but just ways that little things that can be done to help protect the industry. So it really depends on what you do with your fruit. But happy to have that conversation later on, or reach out to me later if you'd like. Are nurseries allowed to sell trees in the quarantine zones? So I'm going to speak to the HLB quarantine area specifically, just because a lot of California is regulated as quarantine for Asian citrus psyllid. The regulations require that any tree that's going to be for any tree to be sold or distributed in a quarantine area has to be maintained in an approved structure. So there are probably about 10 nurseries in the main quarantine area right now that have an approved structure. They get inspected every 30 days. They've gone through a hold period with some testing that they are allowed to sell trees within the quarantine area. Nurseries that have trees that are outdoor grown, no, unfortunately, and that's something we would want to know about, because we want to make sure that everybody's playing by the same rules. Our job is to regulate equally and to prevent the artificial spread of citrus pests and diseases. So any information that you could share with me or my team would be very much appreciated. What are the rules, procedures for transporting fruit within a quarantine? What about gleaners, food banks, nonprofits? Are they being trained to not spread HLB? So anytime fruit is being moved within a quarantine, and this applies to ACP too, this is not just HLB, the fruit has to be completely safeguarded in transit. That can be done in any way. I mean, it could be in a minivan with the windows rolled up. It could be in a semi-truck trailer that's with solid walls and a solid door. It could be in the back of a pickup truck, as long as there is a solid tarp or a very fine mesh. I think it's 95% shade that covers the fruit and prevents any exposure or spread of ACP, and that helps both keep ACP from getting to the fruit, and it helps ACP from falling off the fruit. We implemented the safeguarding requirement for transporting citrus, I think in 2017. Prior to that, we saw a significant number of ACP detections along the freeway, along corridors. Since that requirement has been put into place, the number has been reduced drastically. Gleaners, food banks, nonprofits, they follow the same rules, and we work with them to make sure that when they're harvesting fruit, to move fruit, and that's pretty much always very locally, that it's completely free from stems and leaves. Again, we want to work with everybody. We don't want to impede business. We want to make sure that people are trained and able to conduct their business in a way that doesn't add a risk to the citrus industry. And I see people on Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, Nextdoor, and some other local online marketplaces. Is that legal? Should it be reported? And if so, to whom? I would very much like to know about that. You're also welcome to reach out to your local county ag commissioner's office. That we do everything we can to regulate those kind of sales, because it is a high risk. It's a high risk of spreading ACP and HLB. So that's something we would like to know about, and that's something that we will follow up on to help again. I've said this before, but help make sure that everybody is abiding by the same rules, because it's all for the same common goal. There was a question regarding the HLB map on the UCANR website. Hopefully the second bullet, HLB detections, trees versus HLB detection psyllids, that was covered in the slide I showed earlier, the mandatory versus non-mandatory detections. I have this slide up. I will pull it up once we go through here. Citrus, does that mean they have HLB? Is this distribution map? Okay, so I will pull that up once we're done here, once we're done through these slides. Yeah, this is the, oh, I guess it's already included. My apologies. So, and if somebody's welcome to chime in here, but basically from that slide I showed earlier, we've had a significant greater number of HLB tree positive detections as opposed to CLAS positive psyllids. So you can see where the dark colors are here, and that's kind of represented by the map I showed earlier as well, where the detections have been centralized. And I agree, it is difficult to see where the CLAS positive psyllids have been found, but there are more tools that are available to help show that, like the map I showed earlier. The last few things I want to point out are just some resources in addition to the UCANR website, which has a lot of great information. Our citrus division at CDFA has a website as well with quite a bit of information. In here, the pests and diseases, there's pest profiles for all the different citrus pests that we're concerned about. A lot of pictures, a lot of good information, including origin and distribution and potential regulations. There's quarantine information as well. For example, this is the HLB quarantine page. Information for growers, for nurseries, as well as a quarantine overview map. And in this map is a active web application, which which may be the best tool on here, which looks like this. So this is what that quarantine web application looks like. You can type in any address and it'll show you where it is in relation to the quarantine area. So if you're wanting to know if you're inside or out, or if you're, if a certain location that is selling citrus trees, like if you come across a nursery that has outdoor citrus for sale, it's extremely easy to look them up to see if that's inside or out. If it's outside, it's fine. If it's inside, then they shouldn't have that outdoor citrus for sale. This is, and there's some links at the end of this. This is the email listserv that I mentioned previously. Anytime there is a regulation update, really any kind of update related to ACP, HLB, a quarantine update, if we've expanded the quarantine boundary, we will send out an email through this listserv. So you're more than welcome to sign up. You won't get spam from this. It'll just be ACP, it'll just be citrus regulation related from CDFA. Again, here's some of those links that are available to you. And that's what I have for you. I'm happy to take questions.
Dan, did you have any
And I
questions? on this?
really, I appreciate the questions that were submitted in advance, and I appreciate your all interest in helping to protect our industry because, you know, if our outreach efforts haven't been reaching you or your friends or your group, then, you know, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you guys and hope to address some additional questions.
Yeah.
And appreciate your support.
Keith, I had seen a lot of stuff where people are talking about hearing speakers who I don't consider qualified to be talking about the condition status of the citrus psyllid. And then whatever the speaker's talking about, like there was a master gardener who was saying they had a speaker for the master gardeners from the CDFA apparently, who was talking about, oh yeah, well, the citrus psyllid hasn't been progressing as fast as we initially expected. And the way he put it to the master gardeners, they were taking it like it's not that big a deal anymore, which I felt that was a complete bad thing to do. So
I agree with you. That's very concerning. You know, we contract with grower liaisons that work with growers and industry people in certain counties. You know, we contract with the media outreach group. We like to depend on our master gardeners, and we do depend on our master gardeners because they're typically very knowledgeable. That is a little concerning if that was the message that was being distributed, because this is, you know, our division is focused on stopping HLB or stopping ACP and stopping the spread of HLB, because we like you guys said earlier, we really don't want this to be Florida.
And then
So yeah, I see the question in the chat from Dan. Why doesn't CDFA scrape the websites of Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace? This technology is widely used in Australia to help or to stop illegal plant sales. We do run into challenges in working with online marketplaces, e-commerce. I would be happy to chat with you, Dan, offline if we can get a little bit more information on this, because it sounds like something we could very much benefit from. But we do have to work with the different marketplaces to make sure that we're abiding by their rules as well. But that's something we would be very interested in.
also, I would recommend in your submission site for reporting issues that people could make it easier. You know, you have form, here's where I saw it, here's the website link, here's what they were selling, something like that. That at least would get you closer to seeing what's going on.
That's a great idea. We can definitely look into that, and we you know, we do receive a lot of reports either to us directly or to the county ag commissioner staff who we contract. We have quarantine related contracts with. So, you know, we are limited in our staffing and our availability to be out there to looking at everything. So any kind of tips and reports that we can receive will help focus our efforts and, you know, really be a better use of our resources to be able to identify these issues, help educate, and prevent potential problems.
Yeah, because we use something on our website, when somebody submits or contact us, it actually is a Google form, which goes to a spreadsheet. So if it came into a spreadsheet like that, you could actually sort it by that column of website address, and you'd pull up the same person multiple times who has been reported or not, and helps with tracking and stuff versus some stuff goes to email, which gets buried real quick. Who's the other? Dan put his email address.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I've saved it, and we'll connect offline.
Yeah. What was the other? Oh, somebody else. Have they been able to increase the amount of staff who's going out and looking for citrus psyllid traps?
So for trapping in Southern California, because it is generally infested, we don't deploy a significant number of traps because we do know that we'll find ACP. We focus on surveying plants and looking for psyllids on plants and collecting live psyllids, which are tested. Any psyllid we can collect in Southern California is sent to a lab to be tested for the bacteria. And we fully staffed, our division has 168 positions throughout the state. And, you know, those staff are, they do any combination of quarantine enforcement, detection, survey, treatment, tree removal, anything citrus related. And the lion's share of our staff is in Southern California because that's where HLB is. The question in the chat, the last inspector of my citrus trees was from county, possibly, and in June of 2020. You can absolutely request an inspection. That can either be done through our pest hotline, which is, I think, you know, if you look at our CDFA webpage, that pest hotline is all over the webpage. If you call in, it'll be diverted to our local, our Orange County supervisor, and he can schedule staff to come out and survey your trees. Like I mentioned earlier, the survey is done throughout the state. It's a risk-based survey that takes into account several factors that we receive those recommendations from USDA. So if your property specifically, and they provide us with square mile grids to survey, and with a recommended density. That density could be anywhere from 5 to 200 properties in that square mile to survey. So that survey is conducted at random. They may look at your trees and they may think it doesn't look symptomatic and may sample somewhere else. It's also possible that they did survey your trees within the last couple of years. I know with COVID, we weren't knocking on doors. We were looking at trees in the front yard only. So it's possible it was surveyed within the last couple of years, but you know, obviously I don't have that information to tell you definitively. But you are more than welcome to call the pest hotline and request for an inspection to be done. But I do want to touch that just because an inspection's done and surveys come back negative, doesn't, you know, it doesn't, it's not 100% guarantee that your tree is not infected with the bacteria. Our staff are trained to look at the trees, look for symptoms, and they will sample to any symptomatic leaves. If there are none, they will still likely sample. But if the tree is newly infected and they don't pull the leaves from the correct branch or the correct leaves, they may not get a positive. So that's just kind of how the nature or the biology of HLB. So just because you do get a negative test, it's without a more robust testing done, it's difficult to definitively say it doesn't have the bacteria. Will CDFA, there's another question, will CDFA be looking at Chinese lanternfly for our stone fruit? I'm sorry, I can't speak to that. That is a different division that's working on that. We focus only on citrus pests and diseases.
How are you testing in San Diego, Fallbrook?
We are testing throughout the state. There's a lot of surveying being done in Fallbrook area. We have had CLAS positive ACP found in a couple groves, one or two, I think one in San Diego, one previously in Riverside, that we've done a pretty intensive delimitation survey around those detections. Have not found HLB, which is absolutely fantastic. But we do a lot of survey effort. We do survey a lot in Southern California and definitely around commercial citrus.
Yeah, and since Dan's here, Dan, can on our website for our chapter, is it okay if we link to your videos that are concerning the ACP or HB citrus disease?
Okay, another question in the chat. When you find an HLB infected tree, do you destroy the tree? Yes. So there is eradication authority established in the California Code of Regulations that if we at this stage, if we do find a tree that's positive for HLB, that tree is treated to knock down with a foliar to knock down any psyllids, and that tree is required to be removed, and we as CDFA take care of that. And the purpose of that is to eliminate the potential reservoir of the disease, of the bacteria. Like I said, because Southern California is generally infested with ACP, leaving an infected a tree with the bacteria that will eventually die would basically just be leaving a tree for psyllids to feed on and potentially spread that to other trees.
Was there any question, the recent questions we put up, did you get all those? The ones that weren't in your presentation?
Yes. Have that right here. We'll take this one last question in the chat though. On the CDFA map, my address is not in the little square, but that bare area surrounded by little squares. Should I be vigilant? I would say, being in Southern California, where it is generally infested, where we have had the most number of HLB detections by far, always a good idea to be vigilant. Any kind of monitoring that you can do for your trees is a really good idea. Just because we have not found HLB in either in your area, it doesn't mean that bacteria is not there. It is hard to find in a tree, so please keep scouting and keep looking out for the healthier tree. So some questions that Frank sent me today. To the best of your knowledge, where is the origin of this disease originally and into the U.S.? So into the U.S., I believe it was I believe it was detected in Florida back in the early 2000s, but as far as California specifically, it was found for the first time in 2012 in Hacienda Heights. And then we went close to 3 years without a subsequent detection, but we did find it in the San Gabriel area where we found a number of detections in a short period of time in 2015, in the summer of 2015.
And one odd thing on that, I heard that the origin, it was originally detected in like 1919 in China. And then although where it was detected in Hacienda Heights was through a FedEx shipment from overseas. And when they opened the package, apparently the swarm flew out. Is that true, or have you heard that?
So the first ACP detection was in San Diego, in California, was in San Diego. The HLB detection was on a tree that the resident had grafted material onto their tree, and they did not source that material from an approved source, which is part of why these citrus production regs went into place. I think they actually went in, I think the Queen Citrus Nursery Stock Program regulation was established in about 2012, 2013. That was probably in response to that, but the first detection of HLB in California was on a tree with material that had been grafted, with cuttings that were not sourced from an approved source.
And if I had a question about people shipping plants from outside the state. I've heard of people ordering plants from other states and just having it shipped here. Let's say not counting Florida where HLB is at, but other states, let's say Arizona, and they feel they're safe to do it, even though they probably circumventing some of the inspections that go across state lines.
So there are federal and state exterior quarantine regulations that prohibit that. California is very obviously a citrus producing state. So material that comes into California has to be done so under permit and through, there's a lot of regulatory hoops to jump through. Similarly, we in California, if it's not maintained within an approved structure that we have compliance agreements with nurseries, they themselves jump through a lot of regulatory hoops, have invested quite a bit of money into producing and maintaining clean citrus nursery stock. If it's not maintained that way, California nurseries are not eligible to ship to other citrus producing states, even where HLB is everywhere, like Florida. So trees, I mean, we have such a fantastic nursery industry in California. I think we would like to see any kind of nursery stock trees being sourced from our own nurseries. But there are federal and state regulations that prohibit trees from coming into California from other states. Even states like Nevada, where HLB has not been found. Another question from earlier, how many HLB positive trees have been found and removed in California this year? What is the status of the project to breed and release silage that do not transmit HLB? What is the most promising technology to eliminate HLB from California? So, I'm sorry, I don't have the number for this year, for trees removed this year, but every tree that we do find that is positive is removed. So I showed a number of, I think, 3,500 plus trees since the inception, since the first one. all of those have either all been removed or are pending removal, because the removal process does take a little bit of time, but we try to get that done as soon as possible to remove the reservoir of the bacteria. As far as psyllids that don't transmit HLB, or the technology to eliminate HLB from California, I don't have any information on that. As far as, but removing HLB from California, this is why we are removing every infected tree that we do find, and as well as treating for psyllids around that positive tree to help knock down populations and prevent further spread. Do Asian citrus, do psyllids starve and die out when no citrus trees are around? I mean, likely, but because they do have an our established host list. That's a great question. They're, from a regulatory standpoint, like in nursery structures, if there is a host-free period over the course of a life cycle, what we determine to be a life cycle based on temperature and conditions, we can generally feel pretty good within a structure about there being no psyllids present if there's a host-free period. But in an outdoor environment, residential setting, that's not entirely feasible. What about optical type sprays to make trees less visual to psyllid availability effectiveness? That's not something I'm familiar with either. The UC IPM, or the University of California does have a list of products that they recommend that are effective against psyllids. It's a wide range of broad spectrum, some organic, some more targeted, that for treating for bulk citrus purposes, we follow their guidance. Comment in the chat: Asian citrus psyllids were eliminated from Australia by destroying every citrus tree north of a certain latitude. That's for us in California, where 60% of I think, and I may be just throwing that number out there, but I think I've heard that somewhere. There's a significant number of residential citrus just in Southern California alone, where we don't have authority to do that, especially with all of our commercial citrus groves throughout the state. So all we can do is treat and eradicate where feasible and achievable, and manage everywhere else. And that's what we're doing through our pest prevention system. Frank, that's the time I have today. I am welcome to share my contact information and have anybody reach out to me or contact our pest hotline to schedule inspection, to ask more questions. Happy to continue this conversation at a later date. And
Okay.
really appreciate your guys' support for our program.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for speaking, doing the presentation. So, okay.
All right. Well, yeah, really appreciate everybody's time.
Okay. Thanks. Then we need this. Okay, I'm gonna have open discussion here between people who wanted to speak versus chat. Anybody wants to talk? One thing that I noticed when I was advertising this and stuff, a lot of entities were apathetic to this, including nurseries. A lot of the nurseries didn't feel it was important, which sort of was depressing considering, the citrus grove stuff. And I have 14 citrus trees, but I have over 50 varieties because we grafted a lot. And I don't want to have that stuff destroyed.
I'm curious if SoCal Edison, when they trim trees, whether they distinguish between citrus and treat them differently than other trees.
Yeah, it's possible they could have missed that. Because I volunteer in a lot of the food rescue stuff, and a lot of them don't adhere to any rules. They just have people who are volunteers for a day, and they end up telling them, hey, go pick these fruit, throw it in this box, and go for that. And then we'll take the box and take it to the distribution center, Gaylord, and then we'll take it to somebody else in a couple of days or that day. So hopefully with the information I've given him previously about that, they're able to contact more of those entities. Because even in the Irvine at the Great Park, they just come out and volunteers come out and throw the stuff in the box and do what I said. So.
Well, I didn't ask Keith, but is it possible that the fruit can be infected? Not necessarily with the bacteria, but with eggs or having a psyllid reside on it?
As the response I've gotten from him and his predecessor was, we can't be 100% certain it's not there, because they can even get some of the psyllids could be in the bag you're carrying the produce in. So you could take the produce off the tree and maybe there's a psyllid on the fruit and it drops into the bag, and then you take it somewhere else and then gets out and goes to a citrus tree near you.
Good point.
Yeah, I saw some stuff before that said it was supposed to be washed to be properly processed, supposed to be washed and the leaves and stems removed to prevent citrus psyllids. And hopefully, I'm sure the big commercial nurseries are adhering to that, but it's the small ones that aren't, like some of these farmers markets. So, any other questions from anybody? And thanks for all the questions everybody submitted early on. It was cool to see him in his presentation. So.
Thanks for putting this together, Frank.
Yeah, I actually advertised so much that we were coming up on the front page in Google when I was searching for the citrus psyllid. And definitely in the images section, I think we had like 5 or 6 entries in the front page there. I did a lot of advertising on it, and it was strange. People who registered for this, like literally during the meeting, and I sent them the link, still didn't go to the meeting. So I don't have any control of that. All I can do is keep pushing it and pushing advertising. Like all the stuff I did on the internet, I have to go through and change everything to go for the video now. So then that'll be more permanent. And we just have to get the word out that it's not decreasing. And the information I had from the predecessor of the speaker was it's a funding issue, politics issue, why they're not advertising it as much. And with this COVID thing, they've devoted a lot of resources away from some of the agricultural stuff. And the agricultural people like Ramiro Lobo, whatever his classification was, half of the people retired or left for whatever, so they could decrease the staff, and they didn't replace them. So everybody's having to do more work. And of course, quality is going to drop because they're doing more things. And it's sort of sad to see this happening. And I wish they would do more testing as far as the citrus psyllids in different parts of Orange County and maybe South Orange County to, because they're not updating the map if they're not tracking much.
Well, the girl who came out and looked at my trees, she was only going to do the front yard until I said, hey, come into the back. And what she told me was every citrus tree in Orange County has a CP.
Well, that's sort of misinformation.
No, she worked for the county.
Well, that doesn't matter.
Well, I believe she could have worked for the state, but and I tend to believe her. Every single tree does have ACP. Now, it doesn't have HLB.
Oh, that makes sense.
That would be a different thing. But I don't think that would have been a good question we could have asked him, because he would have known to differentiate between the ACP and the HLB, which I guess
The
the map sort of
ACP is
does.
just the vector or the host of the bacteria, right?
Right.
ACP is just the insect that feeds on the orange or whatever. Is that right? Like what part?
It also feeds on curry leaf plant. There's a lot of other host plants for ACP.
So what part of the plant are they eating on the citrus plant?
The leaves.
The leaves. Okay. Sorry.
Well, how it progresses is the bacteria that's in the insect, it thrives and multiplies in the insect and also the leaf and the
Yeah,
tree.
it's basically just like malaria. Not all mosquitoes have malaria, but some mosquitoes carry the protozoa. And you can be in or out.
Yeah, but when it gets the ACP, when the when the Asian citrus psyllid gets it, it also shares it with its babies.
Right.
So as long as the insect and its offspring are living, it's still carrying it and spreading it. And the citrus psyllid lasts for about a month, but in that month it can produce 600 eggs.
Mhm.
And it can feed on multiple trees and spread
Right.
it through I assume it's a proboscis, but like a mosquito. Why are you showing us the pencil eraser, Frank?
Well, I'm trying to redo my webcam, so I'm getting a better picture.
Well, is it the juice that's inside the leaf that they're sucking on, or are they actually eating the leaves themselves? Like, will you see holes in the leaves, or will it just have sucked the juice like an aphid would? Or will it like put holes in the leaves like a caterpillar?
Well, what it does is it bites the leaf, and when it goes down to the layer that it infects, then the bacteria starts multiplying and eventually it like clogs it up like cholesterol in the arteries.
Okay.
And it stops movement, and then it's not getting the nutrients moving around properly.
Okay, so it does kill the tree. I guess that's what I was kind of wondering.
Oh yeah, no,
So
it's a death sentence. It's a death
it
sentence for
kills
the tree.
the tree, absolutely. But what about the oranges? Like, I've been seeing a lot of like splitting citrus. People are posting it on Facebook. What's happening to my oranges? They're like split.
But that has nothing to do with this. It's
It
just
doesn't. Okay.
it's irregular watering that's causing that.
Okay. Sorry. I'm still new to the growing fruit trees rather than like vegetables and stuff.
Yeah, no, when we have these temperature swings from 30 degrees to 70 to 100 degrees in a couple days, and then people water more, and then because we're having the drought, and then they
Okay.
water a bunch, and then they don't. Yeah, you're gonna get fruit split.
Yeah. And the reason why I asked about the genetic diversity, I do think of it a little bit like malaria. There are certain people who are resistant. Like if you have sickle cell anemia, you will not ever get malaria. So I'm like, there's got to be some sort of tree that is resistant to this disease. But in the meantime, why aren't we just like growing a bunch of things from seed? Like I get people don't want to wait, but it
Well-
might be the thing that saves our fruit economy.
Well, you're talking 10 years before you start doing
I know.
fruit. Plus, that
mean,
just to
I'm
get the first generation.
So there are breeders at UC Riverside who are doing that. They're using Australian finger limes and Australian desert limes, but pretty much any citrus
For-
that you love,
For
like orange,
rootstock or
lemon,
for fruit?
have the genes for that.
Dan, could you repeat that?
So at UC Riverside, they're doing some breeding to get HLB resistance into citrus, and they're using Australian finger limes and Australian desert limes. Those have the genetics for it. But if you plant any sort of citrus that you really love, like oranges, pomelos, grapefruit, lemons, limes, none of those are going to have the genetics. So really the citrus we love most just doesn't have the genes to resist HLB.
Okay.
Are most citrus polyembryonic?
I don't know about most, but a lot of them are.
Well, the reason I ask is I have a coworker who happens to live in Mississippi who planted a lemon seed and has a lemon tree now. It's 18 inches tall, but it is loaded with spines, which makes me think that as a seedling, it's more like just a trifoliate orange that's so spiny, and it will probably never produce a decent lemon.
So actually any citrus that's grown from seed, it's common for it to be very, very thorny. It's a characteristic of juvenility. So when you plant if you plant a polyembryonic seed that will become true to type, it'll have that undesirable characteristic typically will be very thorny. But planting a lemon tree, I remember my mother, she lived in Florida for a while. She had a neighbor who had planted a lemon tree, and she kept that thing until it finally bore fruit, and it was so nasty. Like she made some sort of preserve. Like I guess if you add enough sugar to some things, you can make something nice, but it was pretty terrible.
I tried one of the oranges, if you can call it, from one of the seedlings. And I felt when I took a bite out of it, I felt like a truck hit me from the side. It was so bad. I don't know. It was definitely not what I liked.
Frank, you still look like that truck hit you.
Yes.
I had to throw something in.
Yeah. And I was going to ask him about like citrus discolored is a symptom. There's so many symptoms, messed up leaves.
I thought the
discolored
leaves were a lot.
leaves.
I thought the leaves were a lot more mottled than that.
Let me see sample. I pulled up samples from my trees. Got a weird one. This one's like this. Dan, what do you think that is? Can you see those brown spots?
I would guess it might be some kind of fungal disease, but I'm not an expert. I don't know.
Yeah. Then has this one that's discolored. Bunch of little spots, sort of.
But again, that doesn't look like the photographs I've seen on.
Well, that's because it's live. I don't have a photograph of it.
Well, no, I'm saying this doesn't look nearly as bad as what I've seen in some of the brochures.
Yeah, but remember in the brochure, they're taking the worst ones probably and putting it up. In the field, we have to figure out which ones are, like this. Is this
So it sounds like you
Possible.
should request an inspection.
Yeah, it's been about 2 years since they had an inspection at my place.
What exactly is the process to test for it? Like what testing do they do to determine positive or negative? Is it tissue samples?
They get tissue samples and then they try to catch some psyllids in the yard. They'll have this little suction thing. Or how would you describe it?
It's almost like inhaling through a straw.
Aspirating.
Yeah, that.
Hmm.
And
But
then,
they take tissue samples from the tree and they do a PCR test, kind of like the COVID test. They're searching for the
Okay.
gene, the disease.
Well, isn't PCR for viruses? I thought this was a bacteria.
Yeah, it's looking for the genetics. So it's the same sort of test.
Okay.
PCR is just genetically replicate, or replicating
Yeah,
the
you're
DNA.
right.
see, Dan's the expert on this because he's actually been to the facility and done videos on it.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
watch the video on that. I think if you're interested, you'll probably find it pretty cool. I thought it was pretty cool to visit that place and see how they do it. But it shows a lot of the stuff they do. But then I hope it's not too boring.
No, it was really
Okay,
good.
so another question I have is I'm not from California. I have no idea, but people have told me that Orange County was named Orange County because of the orange groves that were just kind of naturally. Were they naturally here, or were they
were all planted.
like purposefully? Were they planted from seed? From what? I don't know, but
Probably planted in the late 1800s or early 1900s. There was
okay.
a huge marketing push to bring East Coast people to California.
Okay.
In
So
fact,
I think the very earliest citrus in California was from seed, maybe from the Spanish, and it used to be propagated by seed. But
Okay.
I think in the late 19th century that they got better oranges and they started propagating by grafting by that time.
The Orange County chapter had a speaker, and it had to do with, I think, urban farming.
Mhm.
And as part of his presentation, I believe he went over a lot of the history of bringing citrus to Southern California.
Will you send me that information, Charlie?
I don't
Love to dive
remember
into that.
when the speaker was. You'd probably have to look through some of the old, on ocfruit.com, look at some of the old newsletters.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, I don't think they have that video available.
Well, at
Well,
least
Dan said he has some videos, so I'll look at that.
we could at least narrow down maybe when the speaker, but it had to do with urban agriculture.
Uh-huh.
And was it the guy who teaches like at LA City College? I don't remember his name.
Okay, so let me, we're in the planning stages of putting in trees that we want to eventually become shade trees. And I am, by the way, I say we as in Farm and Food Lab. When we're going to be expanding, we're trying to figure out what plants could be utilized as shade trees / fruit trees in the future. And I'm thinking, why not start some from seed? And if it has crap fruit, oh well, like at least maybe we have good root stock or something. I'm not sure. I don't know. I missed.
And to clarify, the Farm and Food Lab is in Irvine, near the in the Great Park.
Yep. Then
near
we'll
the,
be
balloon
still
area.
in the Great Park.
So they're moving to another location. How big is that location?
Up to 30 acres, I think, or 50 acres, growing for SFUA's intentions. But basically, we're going to be expanding our public area and have a back 9 that's much larger than our public area. So we're basically trying to create like Disneyland of the plant world, with still the intent of having quite a bit dedicated to feeding the families of Orange County, you know, still through our food banks, you know, our association with food banks. So I don't know if that answered your question. I'm sorry.
And I supply the worm farm in that with about 1,000 pounds of produce a week.
Yeah.
That's waste produce. It's the bad produce from the food pantry hub, and it's helped them out a lot, except for when they have a lot of work to do.
Yes. Trying to get some more hands over there with John. And honestly, he needs a lot more browns. So I'm just trying to figure out how can we get more browns for him to mix in with the food, and more hands on deck for flipping that stuff. But anyway, that is nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
So my apologies.
Is he still making Johnson Sioux bioreactors?
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, I just acquired a good supply of big, like 4 or 5 inch diameter heavy cardboard tubing.
Oh, fabulous. That will definitely come in handy, especially as he is also going to need to be expanding, or want to. I'm not really sure. If we can get help, you know, and more business, then
I'll be happy to trade that for the wire used to make one reactor. I can't find that wire anyplace.
what kind of wire is it?
Well, what he uses, you know, the cylinder, that heavy mesh wire.
Oh, okay. Because we were literally about to throw away some light gauge chicken wire. And I'm not sure if that's the same thing. I think it might be.
No,
No. Okay.
no. What?
I've never seen the inside of it, to be perfectly honest. I
You-
just know what it looks like on the outside.
Well, it's a big heavy gauge wire. It's, I don't know, what is it, 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch in diameter?
Jeez. Okay.
Well, you see it when, unless there's a burlap bag hanging over it.
I just see the white tube with the holes drilled out that's sticking out of the compost pile. And he says, oh, that's a Johnson Sioux. I'm like, okay.
Well, but you see the big cylindrical shapes. Right?
Yes.
Okay, well, they're held in place by big wire.
Okay. Huh. I'll just have to look at it tomorrow. I'm struggling to visualize it. Okay. Well, I've taken up plenty of you guys' time. Sorry for all my incessant questions.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. I'm going to bail.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Take care.
okay. Dan, did you hear about our chapter before?
What do you mean before?
We're the South Orange County chapter. There's 2
Oh, is
chapters in
it-
Orange County now.
Oh, no, maybe I didn't even know.
Yeah, we're up
Well,
to,
thanks for inviting me.
yeah, we
that
have
was interesting.
65 members already, and we're 1 year old.
Oh, so it's a new chapter.
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't know.
yeah, I've been with the club over 20 years, and I actually met my wife through the club.
Cool.
Yeah, like this presentation of his, we're gonna have it written down into an article, and then I'm gonna get some images from him as well, and then that'll be put in the Fruit Gardener. So we can enhance the availability of it to more people.
Sounds good.
Yeah, because I just like the misinformation that people say, you know, like, oh, don't worry about it, you know, it's not that big a deal. It won't transfer. And I'm like, yeah, no, I don't want to have it help propagate it. And that's our mandate, is to not propagate stuff that are bad like this.
Right.
Yeah, so, and just, our standard format for meetings when we have a speaker is people register for it, and then when they register, they submit questions, and then we submit them to the speaker ahead of time. All speakers are required to agree that we're going to put our video on YouTube after we edit it. And then the speaker will get a copy of it as well to use for whatever promotional purposes they want. And I think that makes it fair to everybody, and also makes the information available. Instead of having a meeting where only a few people see it, we could have everybody gets to see it.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, but I appreciate you coming. And you're in Australia right now, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right.
What time is it there?
It's almost 2 in the afternoon.
Oh, okay. That's not too bad. It's
So it's Thursday here. No, it's actually a better timing than most California meetings.
so you travel. Well, you're calling us from the future then, because we're
That's
Wednesday.
right. It's tomorrow here.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. But yeah, on our website, we're going to redo it, and it's going to have about 186 pages of fruit information, and we even have mentioned CCP in there currently. And do you know I don't know if Rock is still working there.
He was the last I visited. I was there earlier this year, and I saw him, so I hope he's still there.
Okay.
Is there some reason you think he's not?
Well, no, he just didn't mention him when he was talking in his presentation when he was discussing it. He meant, I guess, since the other person's the director, he just mentioned her.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my favorite fruit was WM Murcott, and then but it's patented. The seedless version is patented. So I can't get that legally unless Four Winds Nursery will send me a cutting, which I don't think that's even legal for them to do.
No, probably it would be hard to get that, but you could just net your W. Murcott during bloom, and you won't have any seeds.
Okay. And I wish they would make those nettings available too. Make it easier for consumers to get the netting that, and the netting that doesn't break down in 1 year.
Right.
Yeah, I hate that when you go home.
I've never tried it.
Well, I got the netting that was for apple trees, and that thing broke down about a year later, and it was just coming off in pieces all over the place.
So there's a company in Florida that sells covers that keeps psyllids out. That might be a good thing to net it with.
Yeah, because do you have the information you can send me?
Yeah, I can send that to you.
Yeah, if you send it to me, then I can put it on our website too.
So that same email address.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send that to you.
Yeah, and then I'll put links to your videos on our website too.
But I don't know if they sell that thing in like small quantities. Like, I think it would be a good idea. Like, I think anyone in the quarantine zone who cares about their tree might consider doing something like that, putting one of those covers on the tree, at least while it's small enough.
Yeah, and if we got enough people into it, we could do a bulk purchase.
Yeah.
So I might even get the people at the Farm Food Lab, if they're putting in new trees, they might consider that just to help keep some of the pest off the tree until it gets more established. Because that would probably help protect against the leaf miner.
What is it you would like to purchase in bulk?
Some of the plant, how do you describe it, Dan? It's a cover you can put on the tree. Let me see if I can look it up right now.
Okay.
It's like a mesh.
Yeah, I talked to those the company about like, see if I could do some marketing for them because they have a really good, it's a really good product. But I never followed up with them.
Okay.
For tree, I think it's called Tree Defender.
Tree Defender. Okay.
Let me Google that and make sure that that's
Now,
right.
Dan, I'm not familiar with your work at all. Are you based out of California?
I live in Australia now, but I moved
Oh,
pretty recently. I did a lot while I was in California, but I have a YouTube channel. It's called Fruit Mentor.
okay. I will check
Actually,
it out.
I'll just let me paste this into the chat. So I
Sure.
can give it to y'all that way. There's their website.
Now, Frank, I'm not sure if you knew this, but I'm the programming director. So if there is information that you guys have, now I can't attend like all of the meetings. So if there's ever like a big bullet point like this, I would love to make sure that I get that information out to the general public because we have so much foot traffic. Yeah,
Yes, send you the information.
awesome. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I saw Dan's, was it your video that was talking about when they were showing the stuff in the field? Or was that some other one? They were showing using something like this tree defender.
I don't think I've done a video on that yet. You
Okay.
might have seen that somewhere else.
Yeah, I watched a lot of videos on the citrus HLB and some of the stuff they do to protect against it or attempts like this tree defender. There was one where they literally throwing like some clay mixture onto the leaves to make them like they look gray.
Oh.
Right. I think I put that in one of my videos. It's called kaolin clay. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that quite right. But that's something you could do. You could buy a 20-pound bag of that pretty expensively and share that with the members. That might be a good. I understand that's really good for protecting the trees from the heat too. That might be handy when you have such a terrible hot summer. You spray that on the trees and keep them from getting too hot anyway. It also helps with the psyllid.
Does it interfere with the chlorophyll light absorption stuff?
I don't think so. I've seen a lot of farmers in the Central Valley are using it.
Oh, quick question. Is there like a good video or article to read to kind of figure out what you guys are talking about, what happened in Florida? Because I'm completely clueless.
What do you mean? What happened in Florida?
I mean, you guys have referenced we don't want to happen what happened in Florida.
Well, Florida pretty much had the first citrus disease thing going on and it spread like crazy. And then they didn't have much. I don't
Did they
think they
not
had much.
quarantine?
Yeah, I didn't think they had much procedures to help stop it.
Okay.
And with its windiness and stuff, that probably didn't.
Actually, they didn't have the citrus nursery stuff, and the citrus nurseries actually spread the disease all over the state by shipping trees from Miami. They spread the disease to the whole state, and
Oh,
it
wow.
basically killed every citrus tree in Florida.
Wow.
Yeah, you can actually if you download the Google Earth application on your computer, you can find citrus groves in Florida and scroll by year, and you could just see them dying.
Wow. Okay, I'll look at that. That'll be very interesting to look at. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, but it's still spreading. They're concerned about Texas and other states too. And like I said before, it's the politics and the money that's one of the limiting factors for them and their resources. You know, when Dan did his video, they had what, 8 people doing the DNA testing?
Yeah, I don't know what it is now, but I think they're spending tens of millions of dollars a year just sending people to run around the state and take leaves and test trees.
Wow. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so
Well, thank you guys all for the information. I'm gonna, head out.
okay,
Right.
and another question, Dan, how's the you were working on importing the finger lime into California. How's that progressing?
So on the finger lime, actually the Citrus Research Board, they wouldn't allow me to do any finger limes. And the reason for that is the University of California, Riverside, they have another CRB project where they're taking a bunch of citrus seeds or finger lime seeds from Australia, and they planted like 300 wild pollinated finger lime seeds, and they're evaluating those. And I think there are going to be some release from that, which I think is an inferior solution to directly bringing some from Australia, but they wouldn't let me do that as part of my project, I think, because of that conflict.
Yeah, that's sad when they block it. They could have done it concurrently.
Yeah, I just think it, well.
Yeah. Politics, and it could also be that one of the problems these agencies have is they've had people who've been retired because of COVID, and then somebody else who's promoted earlier than they should have, who now has power, and then they write a rule and say, no, you can't do this, and this is the law.
Yeah, I found the whatever the politics in the Citrus Research Board are just bizarre. I don't understand them.
Yeah, I get the same thing in the food distribution thing for the giving out food to people. They literally will take to one distribution, hand them, here's a pallet of cabbage heads, like 1,500. The distribution has maybe 50 to 100 families that come there. Then they go, what do we do with the extra? Well, if you have extra, that means you're getting too much food. So we're going to have to decrease the food you're getting. And they go, but what do we do with all this cabbage? And they go, you can't give it to another distribution. Wait a minute, but don't you authorize most of the distributions? Why can't we transfer it from ours to someone who can use it, who's distributing food tomorrow? And then you get the policy person saying, no, this is the law.
Yeah.
And then I end up taking that pallet of cabbage to a worm farm to get composted. And the saddest thing is I help plant that cabbage at the research station in Irvine, where they have their Second Harvest has their farm.
Mm-hmm.
And I also helped compost it.
So it could have just gone to a family if they had been sensible.
Yeah. And they actually did that 3 weeks in a row to the same distribution. So every week, less and less people want that cabbage. They say, we don't want any of the cabbage. And they keep sending it. And the saddest thing is none of the other distributions around were getting it. And there's about 150 in South Orange County. And I'm actually fighting that. That's one of my projects, is to go after that. Also, I'm making a tool for them to help plant stuff in their farm, because they have a lot of volunteers come in and they have to dig a hole and put the plug in and then cover it up, instead of having a tool that's the same size and shape as the plug to push in the ground and then just put the plug in.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a prototype, but I'm looking for some company around here who can do them as a donation thing to them. So hopefully push that through, and then they'll be 5 times as efficient planting the stuff.
Well, good luck with the project.
Yeah, I made a prototype of it, and I gave some to the, well, I made a mold of it, and then I have some prototypes I gave to them, and they loved them, but they wanted a lot of them. They need about 140 to 200. So it's just, I got so many projects. I work with 9 different nonprofits. So. But yeah, but I do definitely appreciate you attending.
Thanks again for inviting me.
Yeah, did he address all your questions?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I mean, there was that one I learned about that stuff in Australia. I probably could have worded my question in a more friendly way. It's just like so frustrating. Like I've seen so much stuff like that other person had asked about, and they don't do anything. Where I come here and I go to this conference and I say, oh wow, they're so far ahead, and they've got that taken care of here, and the CDFA is just so far behind.
Yeah, and that's why I was bringing up to him about how the website was a little hard to use, and hopefully they can retool it. And the other thing I
Oh,
want,
I pointed that out so many years ago. I even talked to the head of the pest exclusion in Sacramento, like the guy with the big office with the view of the Capitol building, and he just said, "Oh, we're bad at IT," and that was it.
it's like, well, then you say, is it okay if I record you saying that?
Yeah.
Well, one of these times, one of these speakers I'm going to have is going to do something like that while it's recording, and he agreed previously to the recording. Then it'll be just like, we'll admit that, but can you put a little bit more effort into fixing the problem?
Right.
I'm sorry, I come from the streets. We have to play hardball too. So yeah, but hopefully, they get something moving. And like, there's a guy, I actually pointed out a problem they had with a guy on Craigslist. And this guy, he sells plants on Craigslist. He has a nursery license and he's selling them out of a condo, and he's selling trees. So when he's listing citrus on Craigslist and other, online marketplaces, they go to his place, CDFA gets notice, they go to his place to do an inspection, and there's no citrus trees. And they go, he doesn't have any citrus trees. So he'll say, oh, that's just because I just have it on there from the old thing and I track customers and such and such. No, what he's doing is he's telling people he's raising plants for schools. So he gets people to help him growing these plants all over Orange County. Then he advertises them. Then when somebody wants one, he'll schedule a time, and then he'll bring the plants over to his place. Then that person will then buy it and take it to somewhere else in Orange County.
Wow.
Yeah, and they were not aware of this happening. So now they're adjusting some stuff for this, because they never considered that as a possibility.
Yeah, it's like in Northern California, I've seen this place in like a Asian shopping mall where some Vietnamese guy will load up a whole truck with trees and sell them in the parking lot. Like, who knows where they're coming from, and he just moves them around, and it's all illegal. But I guess the CDFA maybe, I don't think they have any clue about this.
Well, and they don't have the staffing.
Yeah, they probably don't work on Saturday anyway when the guy is out there selling the trees.
Yeah, that's the other thing too, is those weekend stuff. I see that with water, people doing illegal car washing in the streets and letting the other stuff just run down the street. And they choose to do it on a Friday afternoon or a Saturday or Sunday because they know the offices are closed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sad because we don't want this stuff to spread.
Right.
And people put on Craigslist in the free section, they'll put citrus trees, free citrus tree. It's in a pot. Okay, where's it? Where are you at? La Habra Heights. Wait, isn't that ground zero for the citrus facilities in Orange County? Oh, and then this guy in Irvine would get it. Give it some fertilizer, maybe a little Super Thrive, so then it looks better. And then he turns around and sells it to somebody.
Yeah, all they have to do is scrape it, like they're doing here in Australia. Scrape those websites.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna mention to him that Craigslist, you can save a search and have it automatically notify you when a search result comes up. So
Yeah, so maybe Craigslist, it's easier. But here in Australia, they don't have Craigslist. They have something called Gumtree. I think they had to write special software for that, but they think it's important and they do it. And they have a good cooperation between the state and the federal government too. Whereas in the US, I think they don't. Like probably the USDA, they don't even think about this either.
no. And what is the penalty for selling to violate the quarantine in California?
Yeah, I don't know. Has anyone ever been punished for that?
Yeah, no, what are here, give me $20. Here's the fine, $20. Give me $20, you know? Like the joke fine of Nestle. Nestle had a well they dug and they didn't put a meter on it. And they were using it to pull all their water that they were selling in their bottled water, millions and millions of gallons a year or maybe monthly. And they were doing this for like 10 years or something. And they gave them a fine of $400.
Wow.
It's like, wait a second, if you had a meter on it, you would have had to pay millions of dollars of getting the water.
That's crazy.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, are we gonna get a new meter? No, we'll wait for the next fee. So. Yeah, but when are you coming to California again?
I'm not sure. I don't have it scheduled right now. Last time I came, it was so expensive. I hope the airfares get back to normal.
Well, because domestically, they're always running specials right now because less people are traveling. And the only problem with traveling right now is every person I know who's gotten COVID all had one common thing, is they recently flew on an airplane.
Well, I was fortunate. I caught it before I flew.
Well, that's good.
Oh, I guess it was. So we went again. We just stopped by in California very briefly because the flight was cheaper. We flew just for a family vacation. And for 3 of us, it cost $10,000, but that's Australian. We flew to San Francisco, Chicago. Oh, I take that. We flew to Honolulu, San Francisco, Chicago, back to San Francisco, back to Hawaii, and then Australia. That cost 10,000 Australian dollars.
What's the exchange rate?
Well, actually, the US dollar is getting really strong now. It's 1.5 Australian dollars per US dollar. So I guess that would be about 6,500 US dollars. But
And how many, that was 3 people?
Yeah, for 3 of us.
And did you purchase it a distance ahead of time?
Yeah, it was more than a month ahead of time. But then my wife, like, she heard there, maybe it was just because the air travel was getting restarted after the pandemic. My wife had heard like people canceling trips to Hawaii, so she was curious. She searched it for like right before our trip, and it was like $8,000 just for a one-way ticket to Honolulu.
Well, but
it was.
Well, my wife's from Chile, and the cost of airfare to Chile is usually between $900 to $1,500.
But
And
like before the pandemic?
Yeah, before the pandemic. And the funniest thing was one-way tickets were more expensive than a round trip ticket. A one-way ticket would be $3,000.
Okay, well, maybe that was part of it, but I think it was still, no matter what, it was outrageous. The plane was so full, and they were like, people were giving up their seats. Obviously, there were people paying that. They were, buying tickets on a flight that was already fully booked.
Yeah. But
It used to cost like $600 and something to fly, and that's US dollars, to fly round trip from Sydney to San Francisco or LA. But
how long ago was that?
that was just right before the pandemic. That's probably the last price I paid. I think that would have been March 2020. That was that was my last flight. I flew, like, when things were getting crazy, I was actually in California, and I flew the day they changed the policy that everyone who flew back to Australia had to be quarantined for 2 weeks. And I guess I was fortunate that I got back and I didn't have to do that in a hotel, and I was able to do that at home.
And what I was always curious about that, maybe when someone's quarantined, if someone happened to be quarantined like that and they had to stay in a hotel, would you have to pay for that, or would the state pay for that?
So at the beginning, the government paid for it, but I think later in the pandemic that they made the person who was traveling pay for it.
Yeah, because that can get pretty pricey.
Right. But like at first, I think it was like the hotels were all empty anyway, so it didn't really, it was good for the hotels. It was just sort of a subsidy for the hotels, but well, anyway.
Yeah, because luckily I actually think I had COVID a month before it became an official disease. When
Yeah,
in March,
wouldn't be
I got-
surprised.
yeah, I got sick in February. And I volunteer a lot at Disabled Sports in Mammoth, so I'm around a lot of people. And I had the worst pneumonia case I ever had. And since then, I haven't caught COVID, even though there's been 3 times that I've been around people who the next day were diagnosed with COVID.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah, it's weird. My nephew, I think this was during Omicron. My nephew here, we sat down and we were watching TV like right next to each other for 2 hours, and the next day he tests positive. But I get a little bit sick, and the rapid test, it comes back negative every time I took it. So I don't know if it's the test didn't work or I had just a very mild case.
yeah, well, we get tested every 2 to 3 weeks pretty much since COVID's testing's been around. We're getting tested every 2 to 3 weeks, and I've never tested positive. And you sort of get where you're like wishing you get tested positive, because you're like, I want to see that I got it. And this test working or something?
Yeah, we were actually a little relieved that we got it after spending $10,000 on our airline tickets, because that meant that we weren't going to be stopped from flying.
And did you get the vaccine stuff, or is that required?
Oh yeah, we all had the vaccine, but now, so we went to the doctor on Monday for something for my wife, and I was asking him about the 4th dose, because we're just coming off 3 months since we actually had COVID, and I asked him, well, can we get the new bivalent vaccine? And he said no, that the government, they've approved it, but they want to use up the old one first, which is so stupid.
Is this some idiot who got promoted when he shouldn't have?
I don't know.
Who made that decision?
But my doctor, he said, oh, well, when he heard that from the press, he didn't believe it. So he went and he researched it more. He said, oh yeah, the government's actually, that's stupid. And they don't do that with the flu.
Yeah.
So like
Well-
as soon as you have, and he said even by the time they start using that one, it's probably going to be obsolete because in the US they've already, like that one's based on the first Omicron strain. In the US, they're going to come out with something with the latest Omicron strain.
Well, they had, it's so funny here, some of this little snippets of information that gives you an idea how the government's so messed up. In the like, your government should have shipped that stuff to another country who's less fortunate, who can't even distribute any vaccines.
Yeah,
their people.
that's what I said. I said to him, I said, well, why don't we just give that to some poor countries? But he said, well, basically in those countries that the people don't really want it.
Why? Probably didn't even ask them.
Yeah, I don't know,
And
but I think there are a lot of others who could benefit from it.
yeah, like, you know, that was a Zika or Zeta disease. It's not the COVID thing, it's the other, it's a different
Yeah,
disease.
yeah, I know what you're talking about. Something for, I think it's spread by mosquitoes.
Yeah, or something, and it was in Africa where it's dominant. They don't have much money for vaccines and stuff. And in the US, for whatever reason, before it was starting to get more aggressive, we had 20 million doses that expired and they threw them in the trash.
Oh, that's terrible.
It's like, really? You couldn't have noted in your system automatically to say, hey, these are going to expire in 3 months. Maybe we should send them to the source of the problem and have them decrease, so then the problem isn't as spreading as quickly.
Right. But anyway, so I'm ready to take the 4th dose, but I don't want to take the old one.
Yeah, it'd be a waste of time. And
Right. And then it would, I wouldn't be eligible for the new one when they run out of the old one because I already had my 4th dose. So it's so stupid. They're just going to have to wait for it to expire because probably a lot of people think the same. They don't want to take the old one.
yeah, it's you're taking something ineffective, which then blocks you from getting the one that's supposed to be effective.
Right.
Yeah.
And I already had the Omicron anyway, so I'm not too worried about it.
And how was the Omicron for you?
It was just we had all been, well, my daughter had only had 2 doses, but she didn't have it too bad. My wife and I, we'd had triple doses, and it was basically a nasty headache and like a cold with a nasty headache. It wasn't too bad.
Oh, mine, when I had that pneumonia thing, I was coughing so hard and so much that if it hadn't broken the day it did, if it had continued one day further, I would have been in ICU, because the next day when I was over the coughing, I was just doing a couple coughs during the day. And every time I coughed, it felt like somebody kicked me in my stomach and I'd like almost fall to the ground. And if I was coughing like I was the day before, I could not have handled it.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's what a lot of people experienced with the COVID when they got it.
So actually, I think I had the first strain that time when I was telling you I came back from California. I actually got sick on the plane coming back. Like it was so surreal that week I was in California. They were, the advice was don't wear a mask, and it seemed like everything was pretty normal. People just going about business as normal. But I got sick on the plane, and I have the Apple Watch, and it showed my heart rate. I was just sitting there in the seat. Like I started coughing on the plane, and my Apple Watch showed my heart rate went up to like 150 just sitting there. And then I get back and I'm reading everything about the disease while I'm quarantined in one room of the house. And it says, I learned that it's actually like a blood vessel disease that affects the heart. So I actually declared myself to the biosecurity people at the Sydney airport, and they sent me in an ambulance to a hospital to get tested. And then I was sitting around with like 100 other sick people waiting to get tested. But the test came back negative. but the doctor at the airport told me that he thought I had it, and if the test came back negative, he said don't trust it.
Yeah, that's what I've heard from people I know who are doctors.
So
Yeah.
I think I had it. It seemed consistent with it, but I think that was worse than when I had the Omicron. But it wasn't like pneumonia type symptom.
Yeah, no,
Or I
it
guess,
was,
wasn't quite that bad like you had.
yeah, I went to the doctor and he said, I don't even have to x-ray your chest. You have pneumonia. He could totally hear it. So, and I know some people I know actually died after they got COVID. And one person died not because of COVID, but because the doctors gave her medication she was allergic to that she wasn't supposed to have.
Because she had COVID.
Well, because she was actually over COVID at that point. And they had when they got over it at the hospital, then they have to transfer them to a 10 or 14-day facility for quarantine or whatever it is. And in there is where they gave them the wrong medication. And then because in the weakened state of the body, they died from the medication that they normally wouldn't have died from. They would just have, allergic response. But because they're on the death certificate, it was rubber stamped as COVID. Then you couldn't go after the doctors for giving them the wrong medication.
Mhm.
So you were in Australia before COVID kicked out, right?
Yeah.
You'd moved there.
Yeah, we had moved before.
Yeah, here they were all over the place. The masks, I don't know if they were the same as over in Australia as here. You had to wear a mask everywhere, and they're making you wear masks that I considered completely useless because they're a piece of cloth.
Right.
Then they go,
Yeah,
oh,
like
Go.
right now, I think with Omicron, it's so contagious. I think the mask is pretty much useless unless it's like perfectly fitted in the right kind of mask.
well, during COVID, the masks we used were respirators, and it was a P90, P100. And my wife made a cloth thing covering it so it looked like a big mask. And we had this stuff beforehand because when I'm working on stuff, I'd be cutting cement or something, and I'd be wearing those because I don't want to have cement in my lungs. And everywhere I would use it, some of the places would question and say, no, you have to have a cloth one. Wait. I have the best thing you can get. What are you talking about? And Kaiser would not let me wear it in any of their facilities.
That's crazy.
I go, but this is protecting me completely. And they go, but you could breathe out and get stuff. And I go, but don't we have the same thing in covering this as well? We put a mask on the mask.
And they wouldn't allow that?
No. And they go, no, we will not allow that because you have a respirator, and we ban respirators in our facilities.
Oh, that's so crazy.
And I go, but I'm probably the one who has zero chance of having it because everywhere I go, I wear this and I don't take it off. I've been trained on this. I was trained with lead and asbestos abatement from the state, and I know what I need to wear and how to fit it. And I know you don't take it off every 10 minutes because that's useless, because if you have a contaminant on your body, you can get it in there. But no, they have these procedures that somebody decided was the right one when it was completely useless. And my concern about the whole deal is how many people are going to have fibers in their lungs from whatever plastic cloth mask was breathed into their lungs that's stuck there and not coming out because it's, a squiggly fiber that was nylon or whatever that clothes are made of.
Some cheap stuff.
Yeah, like the ones that Costco was selling was KN95, and a disclaimer said, we haven't verified any of this. We don't know if it is, it's your responsibility or some stuff like that. Basically saying, we don't know what the hell this mask is. you know, and
Well, I
yeah,
think Australia was a pretty good place to be during the pandemic because they were actually able to drive the cases to zero early in the pandemic, and then like we didn't have it bad until the Delta strain came around. They couldn't stop that one.
yeah, but by then it's not as deadly.
Well, it was as deadly because it was so bizarre. We had this really good vaccine, the AstraZeneca, but maybe it kills like 1 in a million people. So because they had zero COVID, the government doctors were telling people not to take the vaccine. So when the Delta strain came around, the population was mostly unvaccinated.
Oh, okay.
So, and the Delta was a lot more deadly than the original strain. So it was a bad, and then they had super severe quarantines. We couldn't leave our house, go further than 5 kilometers from our house. And it was just super strict, but
Yeah,
anyway, they used that to get they got the population to get vaccinated in exchange for giving freedom once a certain percentage was vaccinated. So we got vaccinated pretty quickly.
well,
And
that's
then they opened it up again.
yeah, we had some of the weirdest stuff here. And vaccine companies fighting the other one, putting allegations about it. 3 vaccine companies, what is it? Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and I think Moderna.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually got the Johnson & Johnson. And that seemed to work out fine for us. So
Yeah, I think that's similar to the one that we had, the AstraZeneca. So my wife and I, we took that one. We got it as soon as we could. We weren't worried about a 1 in a million chance of dying from the vaccine.
well, part of my concern on it was if I get the disease, a lot of times, I'm working with the disabled people and I would kill somebody,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like I was super concerned about infecting other people too. Like my in-laws, they're old. They could die easily.
Yeah. My postman at the time, he said one of his grandparents died after he caught it.
Uh-huh.
So it's sort of hard to live with that as a person. Then you're like, I got this disease and what could I have done differently, which would have made her not die?
Right. My aunt, she was pretty old. She died of COVID, but she had cancer, so she would have died soon enough anyway, but it cut her life short. But maybe it was just as well to avoid suffering from the cancer.
Yeah. Friend of mine's husband who had dementia died from it, which was a blessing in a way, because I personally, I would not want to go out with dementia.
No.
I told my wife, if I ever get dementia, first thing we're going to do is we're going to divorce. You're going to get all the assets of everything. Because in California, the state will not pay for your care in a facility if you have any assets more than $1,500.
Wow.
So I'm like, there's no way I'm going to have you go spending all your money to keep me alive when I don't even know where I'm at.
Uh-huh.
I go, no, we're getting divorced. And then when it gets to the point, have the state to take care of me and deal with it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's such a joke on it. If they have, you can transfer your stuff to a trust account that's supposed to protect it, but it has to be done 5 years before you're going to go into a home. So if we were able to delay the progression for 5 years, you could get protected that way. And also somebody else has to control it other than you.
Mm-hmm.
So that would get complicated for my wife. And it's like, no, just get a divorce, here's all the money. Here, okay.
Uh,
But yeah. But I'll send you the information on that speaker. Did you remember somebody named Amal Joshi with the CDFA?
It's not ringing a bell now.
Yeah, he was the predecessor to him. And it used to be two Northern and Southern California, and I guess they merged into one when they gave him the job. And he seems to be very receptive to stuff.
Uh-huh.
So that's cool. And when I was discussing him before about how some of the master gardeners were talking about it, that it's not that big a deal, and telling people, some of them were telling him, oh, and there's a cure. They developed a spray from the Australian finger lime. It's like, no, that's in the testing phases.
Right. I think the University of California, Riverside put out a really bad press release that made people think that something that's just research is actually a cure. It's not
Yeah.
proven yet.
No, that was called increasing some company's stock value. But, and your other thing you mentioned about the cost of the budwood from the citrus collection going up so much, that's actually been a discussion between members not wanting to get it because it costs so much.
Right. I mean, it's so stupid that these farmers on the Citrus Research Board voted to do that. I don't understand them. Like, if they could look at my email inbox, they would not have done that, I think.
Yeah, no, and you know this research station in Irvine,
Yeah,
South Coast Research Extension, whatever.
I've never been there, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I've actually planted stuff in there by hand, so. They had 200 acres. And from my understanding, the agreement was, it was donated by the Irvine Company a while ago. And it was the requirement of it that it had to be used for agricultural stuff. Otherwise, if it's not, it reverts back to Irvine Company. 40 acres of it recently reverted to the Irvine Company out of 200.
Huh.
And they're building condos or houses on it.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the people, the powers that be seem to want it to go.
So they'd like all the citrus trees to die.
Well, they want they're actually going to take out a bunch of the avocado trees there. I don't know how many of the citrus trees are left even in there. I know the dragon fruit collection was pretty much decimated. And they messed up the volunteer program by making the master gardeners decided, oh, we can't just take regular volunteers. We want you to commit to 50 hours a year. And when you come here, you're going to do stuff like weeding, stuff like this, and you can't take any cuttings of anything, even though we're throwing it away, and it's a non-patented variety. Same with the produce. And and you can't take photographs in there.
So they drove it away.
Yeah, that's the correct term. And they basically make you commit to 50 hours a year. And then I think more of the master gardeners seem to be involved in it. And I actually lost my respect for the master gardener program when I found out more about it. Have you ever been a master gardener?
No.
In Orange County, it's limited to 65 people every 2 years who can apply.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to do, I think it's 50 hours that year. Then the next year and subsequent years, you need to do 25 hours a year volunteering on it. And some of it you have to attend additional seminars or teach some stuff. And I'm like, why are you limiting it to 65? I don't get this. You're blocking people. You're impeding the growth of interest in agricultural stuff.
Right.
Isn't that your job? You know, it's sort of sad. But since I'm always the squeaky wheel and draw attention to this, they're not going to like it when I start mentioning this stuff more and say, hey, why is it limited? You're decreasing it. And how did you lose 1/4 of your research station?
Uh-huh.
That's just dumb. Because all you would have had to do was throw out some cactus or something. There, we don't have to worry about water.
Mm-hmm.
We're investigating natural plants. That's all within the mandate. And have you ever heard of something called Grpwers?
No.
Grpwers is a it's more drought tolerant ground cover. And it's an excellent replacement for grass because it grows green and it's green all the time. The longer it's in, the deeper the roots go. It uses initially like 20% of water that grass uses. It grows by runners. It doesn't grow by seeds. So it doesn't go crazy. You just have to basically edge it. And it doesn't grow very high. So you usually don't even have to mow it. And it does produce some flowers. So if people are allergic to bees, they might want to not have that. But it's just about to go off patent. And you don't hear them talking about this at all.
Mm-hmm. They could be working on that.
Yeah. And I've actually, one of my neighbors, I gave him some cuttings of it and he planted it in his front yard earlier in the season. And now about 1/4 of his front yard has it. Hasn't gone dense yet, but it's been spreading out more. And you're noticing that it's green all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And once it establishes, it'll get more dense and you still can walk on this stuff, but it's going to be easier to maintain than grass.
Uh-huh. So it'll be nice during the drought.
Yeah. And you've heard how bad the drought is here.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad, especially with the water generation of electricity. People don't realize that at night, where do you think your electricity comes from? And then they're doing these cooperative, I don't know, cooperative would be the best description of it, of clean energy coalitions. Let's replace Edison with your clean energy coalition. So this way you're getting more clean energy. And okay, where are we getting our electricity from? Well, we're managing it, but it's coming from Edison. Okay, why is there a middleman in there? And then people are signing up for that as far as each city.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go, why is our rates higher? Middleman.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, but hopefully we can get some change. But okay, well, I'll sign off so you can get back to whatever you're doing at 2 or 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks again for inviting me. It was nice.
Yeah, but keep checking our website. Our goal is to be the chapter that is the chapter other chapters are modeled after.
So that's a good goal.
And we make our Zoom meeting membership available to some of the other smaller nonprofits who don't have as much resources and other chapters who don't have as much resources, because we're using it once or twice a month.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
We even have some nonprofits are hosting their website through our hosting account.
Mm-hmm.
Because we just set up an extra WordPress site. Here's your login information, make your website.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't cost anything extra because we can have almost unlimited websites on our account.
You're right.
And yeah. Oh, and it's a funny thing the nonprofits aren't utilizing is Google for nonprofits. Have you heard of that?
No, I don't think so.
It is nuts because they give you, as a nonprofit that's 501c3, they give you $120,000 of free annual online advertising.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, so you just set the limit per day to $323, and you don't spend a dime the entire year on advertising. And you can customize it to whatever you want. Do you want more volunteers? You want to put the word out on something? Whatever works for your business model as a nonprofit. And it's like the nonprofits aren't utilizing it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we get a free Google Workspace account with it, or it's a free basic one, and then you upgrade to the $3 a month one, and normally $20. Also, YouTube videos. That's a trippy one too. If it's a nonprofit, your requirement is 10% of what someone else's is. Does that make sense?
No, what do you mean your requirement? Requirement for what?
Let's say, you know, the YouTube thresholds. Like, I think there's a threshold at like 10,000 viewers or
Oh,
subscribers.
you mean like to get monetized or something like that?
Monetized, or even just the levels where they
Or
promote it more.
Partner program.
Yeah, it's 10% on a nonprofit compared to what you as a non-nonprofit have.
Uh-huh.
So our threshold as a nonprofit is 1,000 subscribers. Yours is 10,000.
I think normally it's 1,000. That's
Well,
my understanding. But there's another thing. You have to get like 4,000 hours of watch time per year. That's a tricky one.
Well, this one, we only have, ours is 10% of that. Whatever
So
threshold you have.
400
It's
400
it's
or one.
yeah, it's crazy. We made sure we got our account set as a nonprofit with Google for that. I can't touch the thing about the money because CRFG Inc. would have to do that. And I notified them of the program and submitted the information. So I can't do much more than that.
Well, and anyway, the like ad revenue from YouTube is not very much. I can tell you that.
No, and they're demonetizing stuff over time. And in the States, one of the requirements has to do with kids, because any videos that they consider marketed toward kids can't be advertised.
You're right.
So they don't advertise it. You can't search for it. And it's pretty much killed unless you can just outside the site link to it, and you don't get any money for it. And so that's why you'll see some YouTubers swearing in their videos at different times, and you're like going, why are they doing that? That's the reason. It was a big deal a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pointing it out because the other Orange County chapter wanted to promote getting kids into the club. And I said, no, you can't do that, because anything YouTube, you're going to get buried.
Well, I think as long as the video isn't targeted to children, and if it's something about fruit trees, I think it's pretty neutral.
Well, but it can get, sometimes could get vague on there. Let's say you had a fruit tree video you're showing and somebody's having their kid talking or something, or somebody decides to market in the club to Imaginology for kids. And then somehow that gets related to the FCC, and then the FCC bills you directly for violating the law, because that was the big deal, is it passed through YouTube to the content provider.
Mm-hmm. Well, you could set this thing on a per video basis. So if like there's some video that's targeted to children, you could set this flag. And
yeah, I know that. But I want to stay a couple miles away from that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, speaking of that, on views, I was looking at the citrusillid videos on the internet, on YouTube and all that. And like, what was yours from 2019? And there's only like 19 or 20,000 views. And I'm finding that across the board. It's depressing.
Yeah. Yeah, very much. I think what I've learned is if you make a video and it's just about something like that, that people aren't interested. They're not going to click so easily. But if if it's something about grafting or growing trees, they're more interested in that.
Well, there's one YouTube guy I call him a jackass, because he'll attend a meeting of somebody's and he'll record the meeting and then he'll put it in his YouTube as if they're promoting his product. And what his product is have you heard of Ivy Organics?
Yeah, it's the white paint guy. Yeah, I hate that guy.
Yeah.
Like every one of his videos, he's trying to sell white paint. And I would never buy that product, because I go to Home Depot, or there's a store here like Home Depot here called Bunnings, and they all have something they call oops paint, like color sample paint. You go and you buy a little can of color sample paint for 50 cents or $1, and you add 50% water, and there you have it. You don't need this guy's product. It's like this guy, he's I guess he registered his paint as organic, but so what? You don't need that.
Have you seen how his paint works?
No.
Oh, it's more fucked up. Technically, the word is fucked up than you can imagine. Okay, in his canister, that's like what, 4 ounces or something. It's a tiny thing. And there's a powder in there. And then next near the powder is a liquid oil. And you're supposed to mix the liquid oil, the powder, and water together. And if you have to also use it within like 4 or 5 days or something. And then you're supposed to paint the trunk of the tree. And according to his videos, like the one I was looking at today, that I was so pissed off about it, he was alluding that it protected you from citrus psyllid disease.
Oh my.
The captions and everything was like this. And he's talking about how great his trees are doing. And I'm going, you're painting the freaking trunk. That has nothing to do with your tree. And he's saying, oh, it protects it from winter burn, sunburn, Godzilla,
But in addition to that, he has a lot of videos that are just technically wrong, like about propagating citrus and stuff like that. Like I pointed him out to the CDFA, and supposedly the LA agricultural commissioner was going to talk to the guy, but I never heard anything about that.
Yeah. And do you know how much that can of paint cost that he's selling?
Well, like $30 or something.
$30 to $40.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I guess there's suckers out there who will buy it.
Yeah. Well, I know he put, I guess the word is shills. Like a snake oil says, and how somebody in the group that says it's doing great. And so they post stuff in the videos. And when people bring it up, I say, I go to the hazardous waste place at Sand Canyon, pick up some of the scrap paint they have there. I prefer indoor latex paint, light color, mix it with some water. And then I usually will apply it with a brush or a sponge.
So I found another nice way to do it is just put it in a spray bottle and spray it on the tree from a spray bottle. That works really well too.
Yeah, I haven't had that, other than the fact I'm nervous about ruining the spray bottle.
So I found that if you just rinse it out with water, it's fine.
Okay, I'll try that next time. And yeah, and also, have you had issues with when you do grafting, leaving the parafilm on in hot
So
areas?
in a hot area,
After
I guess
it's succeeded.
I've seen issues where, like if I'm doing a cyan graft, if I wrap it too much, I think it could be a problem. Like it and you leave it on, maybe there could be mold underneath. That's the problem that I've seen sometimes. But
I've seen it fusing to the bark.
oh, really? I've never seen that.
And at 122 degrees is where it gets sticky. That's the sticks on it. And I'm in an area where we can get 100 degrees to 110 during the summer. But they possibly could have spot times where maybe a section gets hotter than that for even a few seconds. But I've definitely seen it fuse to the bark. And where I started noticing this when I did a bunch of grafting on our citrus trees, the stuff wasn't coming off the bark, and where it was at with the bark wasn't scabbing over properly.
So it actually caused a problem.
Yeah. And the other one was in pomegranates. 2 years ago, I handled the Orange County chapter's plant sale, and I was handling all the plants. So I was inspecting them, and the pomegranates, they left the parafilm on. And no, this stuff's just done one layer with a slight overlap, so it's not like heavy, but I couldn't get the parafilm off the thing. It was fused to the bark.
So what temperature does it take to do that?
Well, it's 122 degrees is where it gets sticky.
So if the temperature gets like in the 120 range, then the parafilm can be a problem.
Yeah.
Is
And
that what you're saying?
yeah, and you could it may not, on the average of everything, it's 100 degrees, but you could have a reflection hitting there at the same time and just temporarily getting it warmer than normal. So I don't know the mechanics on exactly when it happens, but I've seen it happening on a couple of items. And like I said, it was the citrus and the pomegranates that I saw it in. And I'd be scraping the thing with my fingernail and it's fused to it.
And it actually causes a problem for the tree. You think?
Yeah. Moisture can't penetrate. And
I'm actually working on a video of something I grafted while I was still in California, but it's showing a technique where rather than parafilm, it's a bark graft and use vinyl tape, which is very common, but I still wrap the scion with the parafilm to keep it from drying out.
yeah, and so when you mentioned the vinyl, some of the grafting tools, those Omega cutters, they come with, they call it grafting tape, and it's cellophane. And then somebody wraps up their cutting in cellophane, and then they go, why did it fail? And I go, I can't punch my finger through cellophane. Do you think the tree can?
Oh, so they treat it like parafilm instead of like a bag. Like I could see if you wrap it, you wrap it around the wounded part, but if you're expecting the bud to grow through it, forget it.
Yeah, no, and this is what, because I went through all the misconceptions that I saw, because it was so funny when because I handled about 1,400 plants, and I'm going, this guy planted a cutting of fig, and he wrapped it completely head to toe in parafilm and then stuck it in the ground. Yeah. And then
they wondered why it didn't grow.
Yeah. And then the other ones, like they were wrapped the budwood in parafilm multiple times, so it's like 3 or 4 times as thick. And it's like, no, that's failing. And then it got us to thinking, when we did our grafting demonstrations, we made sure to point out environments. The purpose of parafilm is not to be a barrier against bullets. It's supposed to be a barrier against moisture until it catches and grows through it. So you minimize the thickness of it and you just slightly overlap. And then when it gets strong enough and stable enough, try to remove the parafilm if you can. Don't like to leave it on there. And then like somebody was saying, oh, but I put in, when I tie it down, I also use rubber bands. And then the rubber bands will naturally break down and it won't girdle it. So in his garden, I showed him where he did the rubber bands that had hardened and girdled the tree.
Huh, that's interesting, because when I've done rubber bands, like I've seen them just come off naturally, but I mean, normally I remove it, but I have seen that they tend to break down naturally.
Yeah, no, not always. This, because different conditions can have different effects on different materials.
Right, I can imagine.
And like I said, I was going there, I had a 10-time monocle that I was looking at the stuff, here's your plant. Let me go look at this. And it was a lot of learning experience. And when I brought in trees to my location, I'd bring plants in. I had a staging area. There was 3 levels of staging. Bring it in first, it goes here. We monitor it for a couple days, and then it goes to the second one, and then a week to the third one. And we actually caught some stuff like, blackberries that had orange fungus. And I had no idea what orange fungus was until I experienced it in these plants. And luckily not one touched my ground, because this is staging areas are on cement. And then in the Orange County chapter, I wrote to the other board members and said, hey, I think this has orange fungus. And then they're going and saying, oh no, you're wrong, can't be, no. And then I go, it is orange fungus, because I've tried all sorts of fungicides and not one of them is affecting it. And orange fungus is systemic, and these are it. And then 2 of the board members who handled the plant sale the prior year said, oh yeah, we had that. It was from the same donor. Yeah, okay, thanks for letting us know. But I was actually able to notify every person who bought one of those plants during that plant sale and say, hey, your plant had orange fungus. Take it out, take some of the dirt around it, throw it all away, and we'll refund you for the plant, and we can buy you some dirt if you want it. And only one person wanted a refund on the plant. Everybody else said, nope, keep the money as a donation. Thanks for letting us know. Because I don't want pathogens to progress.
No.
And simple procedures can stop that.
Right.
Yeah, but I hope your video goes good with that.
Yeah, I'm actually going to show using the white paint, because I'm so annoyed by the white paint guy.
Yeah, I know, I hate that. And do you know Denny Luby and Julie Frink?
I've heard of Julie Frink on Avocados. I don't know the other person.
Yeah,
you
he's
mentioned.
basically a friend of hers he's also into the avocados and stuff. And there's a presentation that they were doing at the Avocado Festival or something, and he's in the crowd, he videotapes it, and he puts it in as one of his ads. Like they're supporting it, the way he does his video.
Oh.
And if it was me, I would have done a copyright strike down,
Yeah, it would be easy to get that removed from YouTube.
Yeah,
They
but
have good reporting for that. It's like if you use someone's likeness without their permission, you can get that removed easily.
yeah, and I would, so we have in our chapter, we have procedures in play for if that happens and he does it, he's going to know immediately, you don't do that again. Your product is shit. You basically have mint oil and dry paint that expires in a few days after you get it wet.
Well, I guess that's good for selling more white paint.
Yeah. It's like, and he watches videos, and his video, like the citrus one that he was doing, he says, oh, I got a notice from the CDFA about the citrus psyllid, and it says I didn't have it, but he makes some big deal about it. He's showing the paper all the time, and see how great my trees are doing. And here I coat them in this, and see, I don't have any citrus psyllid. It's
like saying it's related because he put the white paint on them.
Yeah, it's called snake oil, but in this case, it's snake paint.
Yeah. I can't stand that guy.
Yeah. And the only thing he does is good at promoting stuff. Like he did some videos with Edgar Valdivia,
Uh-huh.
and Edgar was happy with it because he got more exposure. But he said, oh, hey, we're going to take some cuttings and do a drawing and have them shipped to you. Knowing this guy, I don't think one shipped.
Uh-huh.
You know, we give, when we do something, we do it. And, you know, but yeah. So, okay, well, don't want to take up any more of your time. It's nice talking to you.
Okay, good talking to you too.
Yeah, how do you like my library behind me?
It looks good. What is it?
It's a library of computer information.
Oh. I'm actually a computer engineer.
Let's see. When I was an Intel processor dealer,
Uh-huh.
I was the like the 118th in the world of an Intel processor dealer.
Oh, okay. Well, I worked for your competitor. I worked for Motorola for 8 years.
Did they get merged by somebody?
Oh, they got broken up into lots of pieces. I think there's one piece that's still left. That's called Motorola. They sell like certain types of radios to like police and maybe military. I don't know what they do anymore.
Yeah.
And
no,
and like part of it got bought by Google. Google actually bought the part that I worked for, and they wanted it just for the patents for the Android, and then they sold the part that made the phones to some Chinese company, or maybe Lenovo. I'm not sure.
it's hard to track these buying and selling of stuff.
And I used to work on the cellular infrastructure, and that got sold, I think, to Nokia.
Okay. Yeah, I know. Have you ever had a Google phone?
Never.
They suck.
Yeah.
I can use
So
my.
I actually worked for BlackBerry for about 10 years. And then I've used iPhone ever since I left.
Okay. Yeah, my Google Pixel 3 can actually double as a hand warmer, or to warm your drink most of the time, because their parting gift was a last update to it that causes it to heat up a lot. And then the battery life is no good. And I think they can detect that the battery's been replaced because it's still not, it's functioning the same as if you had the old battery. And you can't, here's an interesting one. I cannot turn it on unless it's plugged into a power source.
Huh.
Even if the battery's fully charged, unless I have the back cover off the phone.
That's really weird.
Yeah. And also the Wi-Fi connection, I have to disable the Wi-Fi functionality on, disable the cellular connection when I'm at home. So it doesn't use my data connection instead of my Wi-Fi when I'm at home. And prior to this, a couple phones before, I had a Google Nexus phone, and the Google Nexus phone bricked on an update because they didn't have the phones restart before applying an update. So if there was something corrupted in memory, it applied a OS up replacement with corrupted memory. So go figure. But I actually sued Google for that phone when it bricked. I took them to small claims court and won, and they weren't happy about it. And then they wanted me to sign a non-disclosure agreement to give me the money. So they said, send us the phone back after you sign the non-disclosure. So I sent the phone back, which happened to be instead of the phone, it was an AT&T old phone that I found on the floor somewhere. And their system, because it's going to a recycling center, they just checked in, they received a phone. Here, And then their accounting department said, okay, we received the phone. He's supposed to get a refund from the settlement thing. Okay, here's the phone, here's the money. And then their settlement department saying, sign the non-disclosure agreement and we'll give you your money back. And I say, no, I'm not going to sign it. Just give me my money back. And then they found out they already gave me my money back.
Uh-huh.
Hey, if you want to mess with me, I mess with you guys.
Uh-huh.
And that comes back to when you're talking about getting a hold of these companies like Google, Facebook, you literally have to sue them to speak to somebody in those companies.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane on that, you know. So yeah. But it was nice talking to you though.
Okay, good talking to you too.
Okay, and our discussion is not going to be on the channel.
Yeah, I hope that.
Oh, one quick thing about nonprofit thing. What do you use for video editing?
Oh,
Or
I
image editing?
use Adobe Premiere. It's pretty expensive, but it's really good. I like it.
Is that
like
that
it-
Elements thing? Or is that higher level than that?
I have the full blown thing.
Okay. Yeah, because they have for nonprofits, they make it the Elements video and video and picture one. There's two different programs. They make it a package deal for $30.
Well, I mean, maybe that's plenty good for what you're doing, because you're probably not going to be doing anything that advanced. You're just like, cutting a bit here and there.
Yeah.
I like Adobe Premiere Pro. I haven't used the less expensive one, but I bet it would meet your needs.
Yeah, our main thing is when you're doing a picture, I want to move the background. That's the main thing.
Uh-huh.
And what's funny is the program, even the $30 program does not do as good a job as the free online one. They got this Adobe thing that's free online.
Uh-huh.
They can do removing backgrounds on images. I'll send you a link to it.
Well,
But
just use that one then.
You just click the button and it says remove background.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you do. And it removes the background. And especially People does an excellent job. Objects can vary, but for something where you just click one button, you don't have to choose layers or something. And then when it does images, I'll make an image of something and I'll take 10 pictures and I'll go to each one, click remove background. And then, okay, there's the person I want. Next one, because it stacks them like a visual layer on the bottom right corner. So you can change the order of them. Click on it, remove background, click next one, remove background. Click what layer it's going to be, move it to the top so you can resize it, put it back to the order you want it. And I made a group photo of 10 different people. 3 of them were aliens I found off the internet. And then I had to put a background of a warehouse. So it looked like this is the new employees of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it in less than 15 minutes,
Wow.
not knowing anything of what I'm doing. Which, I was trying the other one, you have to click layers, something, and multiple processes instead of clicking one button.
Mm-hmm.
It should be click the button and then fine tune it from there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a free thing. That's so easy to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So, and when we're going to be doing, our goal is for our website is to have a database going of each different type of fruit, like citrus, avocados, each one, and then a grid of specifics on it, like bricks reading, dimensions, whatever. And then, so up to like 5 photos for each fruit, and then have it sortable for if you want to find out what you have. And then also have it publicly visible on the internet so people could see it. And I don't want it to be copied easily. So that last part's the hardest part.
Oh yeah, I don't see how you can stop that.
Yeah, well, I got 5 people who are supposed to be programmers in this stuff to help working on the solution for that. You know, maybe make it a harder order to copy and paste.
Mhm.
You know, somebody'd have to literally reprogram something to decode it if they try to copy the whole columns.
Right.
I do believe in freedom of information, but if we worked hard to collect it, I don't want to just hand it away and let IV
Right.
Organics to take it. Yeah. So, okay. So I'll let you go this time for sure.
Okay.
Hey,
Talk to you later.
okay.